Good afternoon. Welcome to Biz Talk, Believing is Seeing Talk Radio, where we make courageous contagious. I'm Bob Ryan.
I'm Montana Smith.
And I'm Aaron Kanata, and we've got a very forward-thinking show for you today.
Nice.
Forward.
I can spell it for you if needed.
No, I got this. I got this.
Got this one.
I had the pleasure of meeting the gentleman behind the mic months and months ago, and since then I've been very persistent. I think he would agree to say that I've been very persistent getting behind the mic, so I'm very excited for today's show.
And we do have Thomas Carter here. He's founder and CEO of a company called DealBox, Inc. They productize companies to help them attract capital. We're going to find out what all that means. Thomas, thanks for coming in.
Thanks to be here.
Busy guy.
Yeah, it's a busy time in capital markets and fintech right now, and it's exciting to be here and share.
Do you find that it's odd that the world you live in didn't even exist a couple of decades ago?
Yeah.
I mean, it was, if you talked to somebody 20 years ago, in the conversations we have today, it would be like they were in a different world. And I think we kind of are almost.
Yeah, it's a lot like people are actually saying it's blockchain and cryptocurrency is where the internet would be in 1994. So today we're in 1994, the internet.
That's amazing. I mean, it really is. So DealBox is a company that helps other companies position themselves and package themselves as an entity to raise investment capital. Is that correct?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about DealBox, and I want to talk about why you have a job doing that. Why is that needed?
Sure. Well, entrepreneurs today are busy really trying to build their business, and which is great, and they do a good job at hopefully at doing that. And at some point, they got to decide how their business is going to grow. And we really kind of work with them to develop the best plan to access the capital markets, whether it's going to be equity or cryptocurrency.
Most companies that grow out of cash flow, they grow organically or bootstrap up, takes a long time to get from, say a start to $1 million a year, then to
Sure.
10 million a year, and then 100. I mean, that can take years. So a lot of folks that have a company and an idea that we call scalable today go after capital because it can really move things along a lot faster. So you end up owning a smaller percentage of a much bigger pie.
Yes.
And that's the area you work in, are the companies that want to grow in a faster arena. So they need to attract some investment dollars. Why does DealBox exist? Why don't entrepreneurs already know how to do this?
Well, again, entrepreneurs are focused on building their business, and when they look at the capital markets, there's a lot of different ways to kind of get educated to do that. You could go through an accelerator, you could go through an incubator, you could, read books on how to develop a business plan. But in a lot of those cases, what happens is people get 1, 2, or 3 legs of the stool. With DealBox, we kind of are able to kind of give you all 4. So really an understanding of, how the business is going to be structured. What do you look like today, and where do you ultimately want to exit? So we really try to develop, the best path to take, where they are today, and why are you doing this, and where would you like to wind up? And then we look at that, and then we engineer the best sort of capitalization roadmap to fit that.
Fundraising for a lot of companies and founders is kind of a necessary evil.
Yeah.
And I forget the statistic, but some people will say as much as 50, 60, when they're in the rounds, 50, 60, 70% of their time is spent doing it.
Yep.
Right. And as you said, their focus really is on building their business. This might not be a skill.
Sure.
Do you have, when you talk to people, what do you say if they're pulling their hair out saying, listen, I'm spending all of my time? What's your response? How can you help them?
Yeah.
And what sort of time saving might they have? Do you allow them to get their focus back on the business?
Sure. So that's exactly why DealBox is here. Is we want to be able to let DealBox do what we do, and the company does what they do, and essentially by us sort of helping that structure, putting the package together, we're like a one-stop shop. So what happens is entrepreneur then could be focused on building the business, evangelizing the business. They sort of have the entire roadmap laid out for them, whether they're going to do it through equity, what type of debt, whatever the capital stack might need to ultimately. Again, our approach with entrepreneurs, we're sort of the antithesis of venture capital, where venture is going to look and try to tell you, you know, hey, you didn't do this right, or we're going to come in and help you do this, so they could try to grab more of the company, right? We're sort of the antithesis.
Yeah, they want a low valuation so they can get a higher percentage for what they're spending.
Right. So we're sort of like, how do we build you up? How do we look at ways to add more value? How do we look at monetizing things that you might not thought of? Well, how could we build bigger partnerships, bigger relationships on the you know, with some of the, you know, the business side of things. So rather than telling you all the things you're doing wrong to kind of beat you up and get the valuation, we're going to try to look and tell you all the things you need to do right and be thinking about to get a bigger valuation, and ultimately align the right capital sources too for that capital. So try to bring smart money, aligned capital, strategic partnerships.
So companies go through this kind of phase where when you start, you usually raise money from your friends and family,
Yep.
and what they call it, fools, friends, and family, or something, and your own credit cards, and then you go to angel investors. Then ultimately maybe some venture capital, and then you got all the other financing beyond that. Where does DealBox fit in that? Do you cover it from the friends and family on, or?
Yeah, so we're sort of, I call it womb to tomb, or, you know, napkin, or anywhere ever, at any point where the company is at its stage, from there looking at to exit. And when I say womb to tomb, I'm saying tomb in terms of a successful exit, not burial. So you know, we're sort of a one-stop shop. We could take the company, and we like that ability to kind of come in earlier because we could help structure it properly. So we actually help set up the cap structure, and a lot of times we even set up the corporations for the company. We really focus on putting a very comprehensive financial model that has defensible aspects to it. So it's not just here's a financial model with some assumptions. The assumptions are really thought through, and really detail a very comprehensive financial model, and then write the narrative to that, and then make sure we have you know, the right sort of imagery that complements that. So we'll do a one-pager, a pitch book, and again, the financial model, the business plan, and then the regulation, depending on what type of offering, if it's going to be a Reg D, 506C, or 506B, the different compliance, necessary compliance documents to you know, to raise the money.
You mentioned assumptions early on in what you were describing. My guess is when you're talking to an entrepreneur, they wouldn't go into their business unless they believed this was going to work and make a lot of money. So my guess is we're going to find out when we get back. You're listening to Biz Talk, Believing is Seeing Talk Radio. Thomas Carter's here, founder and CEO of DealBox Inc., DLBX.io. DLBX.io is the website. Go there. I'm Bob Ryan.
I'm Montana Smith.
And I'm Eric Canada.
We're going to be right back. Stay with us. You're not showing up on that at all. So can we either move the camera over, or maybe adjust the camera a little bit?
Yeah.
We could probably move it.
A little.
Yeah, we got some
leeway on
room
our
over
side.
there. We're just trying new equipment. The stuff we had for Facebook was really yucky.
Really?
Yeah, so we now have, I think it's a pretty good picture and pretty good sound. You're the first one we're doing it.
Oh, great. I'm a guinea pig. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was great. You've obviously done a lot of this.
Yeah, sometimes you just, you know, that's why I wanted to wait, honestly, because I have so much stuff going on. It's hard to kind of just like
Get your thoughts in line.
get your thoughts in line when you got like.
And you know what? I think most people come in and do this for the life experience,
Yeah.
because most people don't really expect this to change their world.
Yeah, and I'm just like, hey, all I could do is just go out and do it. And sometimes you look back and go, gosh, I could have done this better, and or I could have done, you know, whatever, or I want to get this point across, or
I can tell you'll always walk away going, I should have said something different. Every show, if I look back on every show, I would have 10 things I could have done better.
but this is the only way you get there, right?
Right. Just do it.
Just do it.
Hey, the very first show I did in 1991, I was so proud of myself. Went home and asked my wife how I did. My ex, no. She said, I turned it off after about 8 minutes. I counted up to 54 ums. And I couldn't take it anymore.
Did I say a bunch of ums?
No, but that's what I did the very first show.
Yeah.
And it's like from that point, I went to Toastmasters, and then I did a few other things.
Yeah, I need to like, because a lot of people want me to speak at stuff, but that's just not my thing. But I definitely, you know, I did a couple different panels so far, but you know,
But this is really no different
Yeah.
than talking to us around
Yeah,
the table.
no,
We just
that's
put
it.
headsets on. You know?
yeah, no, I get it,
Conversation.
right?
We're trying to make it that way.
Sure.
The people that watch us on Facebook, they describe it as kind of like being a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it kind of feels like they're listening in
Yeah.
on somebody's conversation, especially during the breaks, because that's where the really cool stuff happens. Right? She made that.
You sure?
Yeah,
When do we go back on?
in just a minute.
Go back in 20 seconds.
Oh.
You hit the restroom or something?
No.
Too late now. Put your headset back on. We're coming in.
Broadcasting from the ESET studios.
Welcome back. You're listening to Biz Talk, Believing in Scene Talk Radio, where we make courageous contagious. It's a busy time in fintech right now. He helps entrepreneurs access capital markets from womb to tomb. We're talking with Thomas Carter, founder and CEO of DealBox. I'm Montana Smith.
I'm Eric Nada.
I'm Bob Ryan. Thomas Carter, as Montana just said, founder and CEO of DealBox, is in studio. They productize companies to attract capital, and that sounds really fancy for helping people structure their business so they can raise money. And I was just getting ready to ask you, Thomas, about the entrepreneurs that you work with. You mentioned assumptions and working with the assumptions and making sure they're valid assumptions and they have some reality behind them. As I was explaining, my guess is that entrepreneurs don't go into a business thinking it's going to fail or hoping. They go in thinking it's going to be wildly successful. So often when you look at their first run at projections before they've had some time under their belt and, I'm guessing they're somewhat aggressive sometimes.
Yeah, in most cases they are.
How do you deal with the emotions of a business owner that's projecting out 10 million in revenue over the next 2 years and you don't think it's going to be even one,
Well, sometimes it's just them. The projections still could be strong. They just might have to be ratcheted back. So we don't want to discourage them, but there does need to be a sanity check on what's viable and what's just, pie in the sky.
How do you get to assumptions that you can fact check or bring some reality to them? I mean, if somebody's estimating sales are going to grow by 20% per month, that's a pretty aggressive growth rate, right?
Sure. There's a lot of existing data out there and comparable businesses that you could kind of look at and industry analysis. But it's really just, and typically they've done a decent job sometimes at putting together the numbers. It's really just sort of making sure they are what they are and they're believable. And you have to just kind of ask some tough questions and dig deep. But I think doing that work up front and proper planning, if you could do all the work up front that's really needed to set your company up, like day one, really, you want to be in a position where if someone wants to buy your company that day, you should be able to sell it. So what do you think you have to have, ready for that? And
you have to have your financials,
you have to have your
obviously,
financials,
right?
and you also have to have all your due diligence and all, everything about your company. So it is a product, just like if you go and you buy, a bottle of water, the water, everything, the cap, it's all ready to go. You could go out and buy it. And so you got to try to look at your company as a product. So when you go out and somebody wants to buy it, they got to buy the whole company.
So if somebody says they're a corporation, they actually have to have filed corporate paperwork at some point.
And make sure you're in good standing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Make sure you've filed all your continuing and paid your taxes and payroll and all that.
So we really do all of that. We have a very comprehensive due diligence process that we do, and we have a data room, all that's managed, and all this is done through DealBox. That's why we call it DealBox. Everything you need to do a deal in a box.
Do you work with serial entrepreneurs over multiple companies? And do they come back to you, or is it something that once they've gone through this process with you, if they start another company, they'll say, all right, I know how to do this, this, and this?
Even if they do, they use us. We've had it's worked out really well. We helped a company that was developing a smart salt years ago when I first started to do this, and now they're doing a new cannabis project. So they came back and using us for everything.
Are there things you can identify where, like, these are the mistakes that most people make the first time around that after the second, third go of it tend to lessen, or is it all across the board?
Yeah, you do see, things, but it is kind of all across the board. But, I haven't honestly done enough repeat work to have that, but we've done, I think, it 3 times, for clients that have come back to us.
Yeah, your deal flow is pretty big numbers at this point in your career. Obviously, over the years, you've looked at a lot of projections, performance, and estimates of things. Have you ever been completely taken off guard and surprised by the results against the performance, either up or down? Or do you feel like when you go into this, you kind of nail it going in?
We have to kind of nail it.
Yeah.
You see a lot of stuff that's out there, and I learned a lot of this on my own. I mean, I took my first company public in '96 and my second company in 2000, and I learned a lot of what not to do. And so I take a lot of the personal experience and apply it in helping other clients. And
the world of capital today feels like a new wild west. Back in the last century, it stayed, a lot of things stayed the same for a very long time. The way underwriting was done, the way mergers and acquisitions were done, that was handled on Wall Street. There was a lot of things that were very traditional. It feels like everything is kind of new now. Is it easy for people to get the different ways? Because you're talking about raising money, and we're going to get into this, using different techniques than people have used in the past.
Sure.
Is that hard for people to understand, the business owners and entrepreneurs?
I think, well, when it gets into sort of the cryptocurrency side and blockchain, I think
Right.
it's a bit of an education process to get people to get their arms around, because even for us as, capital markets guys, it took, it's a lot to get your arms around because it's a little bit more abstract, when you start thinking things in blockchain and creating cryptocurrencies.
I keep reaching in my pocket to pull out my Bitcoin, and there isn't any in
Nothing
there.
right?
The work that you've done, I mean, you were working well before blockchain was
Yeah.
a twinkle in
Yeah.
Nakamoto's eye, whatever. How likely is it when you meet somebody, because you'll recommend traditional equity
Yeah.
raise, you'll look at debt financing, all those things. How likely is it when you sit down with somebody, do you think that you're going to say, okay, this is going to be a tokenization route? Blockchain will make sense. Is it a quarter of the companies? Is it 75% of the companies? I mean,
So right now that's pretty much what we're focused on, is tokenizing companies.
Okay.
But our core business has been traditional equities. So, but it's a great thing to kind of mix and match or blend.
So
I should
comparing and contrasting, because you just used terminology, tokenize, that I don't think most people have heard at
Right.
this point. And if they have, they probably don't understand it because it's really new. Traditional equity would be where somebody has a business and maybe they sell 50% of that business to equity to somebody for $1 million. They get the $1 million in for whatever they've decided to use it for. It's a basic transaction that most
Yep.
people understand.
Yeah.
What in the world
List.
is a tokenization of that?
Oh man, here we go. Right. So
Put on your seatbelt.
yeah, right. I'm strapping in too. I always try to figure out what's the best way to try to explain it, right?
And that's
'Cause
a problem.
It is
It's
a problem,
difficult.
and we're still working on it. But the best way to look at it is, okay, you have a traditional equity, which people sell shares of their company. I think maybe a good way to look at it is on tokenization is you're really now able to raise money without giving up equity, if you could believe that. It's a paradigm shift.
Because nobody really understands it. Is that why? You don't have to give up anything because they don't really understand it.
Well, they're actually, you're helping them and educate them in building and creating a software, and they're really buying into owning a piece of that software.
Thomas, let me
in that
interrupt you. We're going to
process.
get back to this, the tokenization. I think this is going to be a little bit of a deep discussion. Thomas Carter is here, founder and CEO of DealBox Inc. DLBX.io is the website. They productize companies to attract capital. We're going to find out how. I'm Bob Ryan.
I'm Montana Smith.
and I'm Eric Canada.
Biz Talk. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
I gotta say, this looks significantly better.
What?
It looks significantly
It does, doesn't it? So the picture
quality-
is way better
Quality is
than it was on the phone and the other devices. It was like a.
The sound
Yeah, there's
is
more and more silver.
They told me we were texting.
I cut it off so nobody can see. But you know what I like? The gray hair grows faster and it's thicker.
Yeah. Yeah, I always try to figure out what's the best way to use to describe tokenization, and it's so.
I have yet to come up with
So,
an easy way to.
You know what?
Whole new concept.
If you think about it, it's is Apple owns iTunes, right? And imagine if they didn't have iTunes and Apple didn't want to give up any equity, create iTunes, right? Well, we could tokenize iTunes, and then people could own a token of iTunes, and they could use it to listen to the music, buy the music, interact with it, get rewarded, do everything, and they own a piece of iTunes as a piece of the software.
So it's like Disney bucks.
Yeah,
When you go to Disneyland, you get your Disney bucks or whatever it is. I can't remember.
you're
It's not
trading
Disney
in
bucks.
for that.
Right.
Whereas this you're not. You're creating it. right? So
But you
That's
can
actually
only
an analogy.
use the token
Makes
at
sense.
iTunes, though, right? You couldn't
Yeah.
take that token
unless you want
unless there's a secondary
unless you
market.
do a deal with Netflix.
That's a good way to explain
So-
it. Let's do that.
I mean,
like that.
I don't know if that's or it's like, Microsoft. If you create Windows, but you're tokenizing Windows, you still have you have all these other things Microsoft does, but I think Apple's something that everybody.
That illustration of what you just said was probably the easiest thing I've gotten my mind around.
It's the only way you could start to get people
Right.
there, because they go, okay, well,
So the extreme example of that would be if like Bezos tokenized Amazon. Everything you could buy on Amazon would be purchased.
Or tokenize the book division.
Yeah,
or
or the
token-
book,
yeah.
right.
Or tokenize the drone delivery service or the millions of
but-
other things he's doing.
but I think in Amazon's case, they would do everything because it would just make sense.
Coming back in.
I don't know. I mean, I still trying to figure out like it's a,
Welcome back. You're listening to Biz Talk, Believing is Seeing Talk Radio, where we make courageous contagious. Thomas Carter, founder and CEO of DealBox, has touched over 400 companies with his consulting services. He has over 25 years in the business, and he knows how to align capital resources. We're learning about his journey today on the microphones. I'm Montana Smith.
I'm Aaron Canada.
I'm Bob Ryan. Thomas, thanks again for coming in. You've had a fairly rich background in public offerings. You've actually taken 2 companies yourself public. That's a big deal. There aren't a lot of people in the world that can say that. Taking a company public is a rocky minefield, to say the least.
Yeah.
And you did it twice.
to say the least.
He's smiling.
There's so many ways you can, there's only a couple ways it goes right, and there's a million ways it can go wrong, right? So and the timing of the offering, I can not get into that, but you now have a company, DealBox, that you're assisting other companies structure themselves, not necessarily for the traditional public offering, but to raise capital in maybe some new ways that we haven't even talked about. Aaron, you and Thomas were talking about tokenization or tokenizing things. That's a brand new concept for most of us. And over the break, you gave, I think it was a really good analogy. We got to start somewhere because I don't think anybody's figured out an easy way to explain this. Could you review that analogy that you gave?
Yeah, I'll do my best here. So if you think about, when you buy Apple, you own Apple shares, right? But imagine if Apple, said, hey, we're not going to sell any equity right now, but we have this great idea to create a music platform called iTunes. And so if Apple came and said, hey, we want to tokenize iTunes, essentially what would happen is we would look at developing a token in around the use case of everything that happens with iTunes: purchasing, listening, getting rewarded. So basically,
the use case is how the token would be used. Is that what you're talking about?
the transactional value. So you would actually have, just like you have Sky Miles when you travel, that could be tokenized, right?
Oh, that's another good analogy.
Does
Is Sky Miles.
tokenization always imply that it's on some sort of blockchain technology? Not to confuse this more, but is it exclusive to that, or could you tokenize something that's on the like Sky Miles without introducing that element?
Yes, you can tokenize something without putting it on the blockchain.
Bus lines tokenize their fares.
That's a good point.
Really, Bob?
What?
I think to have the best use case, though, I think looking at blockchain as a way to create efficiency with legacy systems by making them on the blockchain. You're going to have a lot more efficiency, and I think tokenizing that methodology is a stronger use case.
So when you raise capital and equity offering, they're a public offering anyway, there's a bunch of stockbrokers around the United States that call their clients and say, I got 100 shares of XYZ. I remember I was on the floor when Price Club went public. It was a hot offering. Everybody wanted it, right? So you had to dole it out. Yep. But I actually got money in the account to buy those shares.
Sure.
And $5 a share, I think, is what it came out at. Wow. Anyhow, when something is tokenized, is there ever an actual cash exchange for those tokens?
Yeah. So to be clear, like when you tokenize a company, you are creating that cryptocurrency. People could purchase that with Bitcoin or purchase it with Ethereum. And when you get that, you could sell that and get
Actual cash.
Fiat cash. Yeah. So you could, and then when you sell, you're basically selling your tokens. People are going to purchase those tokens in fiat, which is cash, or Ethereum.
What do you call
What's
cash?
fiat?
Fiat.
Fiat money is paper money.
It's paper money.
That's an old term.
Yeah.
In economics.
Seriously?
I've never- I've never
F-I-A-T,
heard
like
that.
the car fiat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh,
fiat.
like
Yeah,
fix
well,
it, fix it again.
I don't know if the car analogy is the best, but
Okay, fiat. I
the name,
have
yeah.
never heard. I've been in the business my whole life and didn't know that term. Wow.
fiat money. It's real
I'm
prevalent.
gonna go
in
look
the
it up now.
crypto.
I'm gonna use it someday.
Yeah.
So there is a way to move the fiat or the actual cash back and forth with the tokens at
Yes.
some point.
Yeah.
When let's say that Apple did take the idea of tokenizing iTunes as that example, would people actually buy the tokens with Bitcoin or buy it with some other cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, so they would be purchasing the iTunes token with either Bitcoin or Ethereum or a cryptocurrency that you could accept. You could accept a lot of different ones, but you want to make sure that you get the liquidity.
Right, because some of them are not liquid at
Right.
this point, right?
Bitcoin's got a lot of liquidity. Ethereum's got a lot of liquidity.
We've been talking about this in the context of raising money for a company,
Mhm.
right? So I could buy Apple shares thinking that Apple is a great product and never have any interest in owning any, whether it's an iPhone or a MacBook.
Right.
There's tons of people that own Apple
Yeah.
that don't ever do that. When you buy a token, are you simply buying it to use the services of that? Or could you be somebody who thinks that's going to do really well and then hold it until it grows? Like, do people speculate on this? Is there appreciation and you could be just doing it as an investor rather than somebody interested in the services of that particular company?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. So you got the use case of people actually using the token, then you got the speculators speculating on the value of the token, and that's why you're seeing a lot of sort of growth and volatility in the markets right now, because people are speculating on all the different types of cryptocurrencies.
And you get nothing in a physical form. It's just like stock. You used to get stock certificates. Now it's all book entry, so it's just registered someplace. Is that the same kind of thing? You don't actually get anything physical with this?
Yeah, nothing physical. You could hold it in a physical wallet, like a cold storage wallet that you have the cryptocurrency.
Like on a thumb drive kind of
Yeah,
thing?
like a thumb drive.
Yeah. I just hope that doesn't get stolen.
Right.
By the way, have you ever thought about the estate planning with the cryptocurrencies? If somebody has $1 million on a thumb drive and nobody else has the key to get into that $1 million
What
in
happens?
Bitcoin
Yeah.
just goes poof if they die, right?
There's a lot of new things that are happening within the blockchain and cryptocurrency to eliminate that. So there's, for instance, right now we're going to be doing security tokens, right? That's the only way you could raise money now compliantly in the U.S. with cryptocurrencies to do a security token.
The SEC has stepped in and said, now these are securities, we're going to regulate them.
All tokens of securities. And if you do that properly and you set up your, with the right companies and using the right sort of technology, and you lose that, you'll be able to there'll be a record of that.
They'll keep a database.
They'll keep
the
a
SEC
record
will.
of that. Well, and the technology company that you're using to do it, like our tokens, you'll be able to, you won't have that problem if somebody loses something.
So is there a beneficiary aspect to the tokens then that
Like
are in
a
the
pale
vault?
and death claim kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, there's two different things. We're talking about securities and like holding Bitcoin. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
if you lose Bitcoin, you lose your thumb drive, I think you're going to be toast.
Yeah. And we'll get back to this. Thomas Carter's with us, founder and CEO of DealBox, Inc. They productize companies to attract capital. We're learning about that and tokenization. Who would have ever thought we're saying that word on the air? DLBX.io is the website. Go there. This is Biz Talk. I'm Bob Ryan.
I'm Montana Smith.
And I'm Eric Canada.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Yeah, what's crazy is it's not just tokenization. It's, you really want to get in it. It's when you look at its token architecture on how you want to set it up, and it's tokenization of like the business, and then it's the token integration and how you're going to use the token, and then you could do your tokenomics, which is like a cap table.
You said token.
Tokenomics.
So if you do this for cannabis companies,
There's going to be a degree
Oh,
in
there's
Don't even get
tokenomics.
started.
cannabis companies, there's a lot of token going on.
No, but that's
When
crazy.
pot became legal, we thought we'd do a Biz Talk talking token. Or token
Well, we're doing a cannabis platform, and I get that all the time because cannabis and crypto are so hot. Such
They're
you
the
know,
two things going right now, right?
Because
And we're like-
you can't really do traditional banking with him. Even now in the states that it's legal, right?
Is that better?
Yeah, there you go.
Is that better?
And they won't care about the threats.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like,
You have capacity to take on new clients now?
Mhm.
We should mention that, just in case somebody's listening.
yeah, that's what we're.
So how much is what you do the consulting work with the companies versus just having the platform? Does every company have to be vetted
Yeah.
by you guys?
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be on your platform
No.
unless they. And that's really the secret sauce, right?
Yeah, we're not putting companies on that aren't.
How do you make your money?
We charge a fee to
They
do.
only
the-
make a token fee.
we charge.
That was coming.
We charge. So our model is we charge a fee for the Reg D, Reg A, and then for the token architecture, tokenization, token integration, and tokenomics to kind of understand how to do that. We get 10% of the mint. So we create this mint like a cap table. So we own 10% of whatever that
It's
mint.
like the investment.
That was fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, bus tokens really could be an analogy.
Well, and I was
Because you
thinking
can
about
only
the metro,
use
right?
like the
You go on
metro
the
line.
metro,
You
have
can't.
to
You
buy-
can't.
You
go-
could
use it
you
anywhere
you could
else.
start to think about this like once you get it, you
Take off.
you won't even like people like have a hard time sleeping because when that aha
Okay,
button
I'm
goes on,
already there. I can't sleep at night anyway.
'Cause
This is going to be miserable.
when else can you do this where you could take a company and
Okay, guys, we're coming back.
and create value without having to give up equity and then have that add to your balance sheet?
Welcome back. You're listening to Biz Talk, Believing is Seeing Talk Radio, where we make courageous contagious. And speaking of courageous, are you courageous enough to see how the sausage is made? Come backstage with us. Come into the studio and watch us on our Biz Talk Facebook page. That's BIS Talk. See us with our guest and watch this overly oiled machine in action. And by all means, comment, like, and share us. And particularly today, we're trying out some new equipment, a new camera, a new microphone.
Yeah, they can actually hear us and see us
You
now,
can
for
see
real.
us and hear us. So if you're brave enough to leave a comment, we certainly would appreciate the feedback. I'm Montana Smith.
I'm Aaron Canada.
And Bob Ryan, we have a few comments already that it looks way better. We
Oh,
did.
good.
Yeah, a little bit of investment in an actual microphone and camera rather than using a phone. You know, this is ESPN. You would think they would have a budget
no
for
more
this
tin
stuff.
can and a string.
I know.
Okay,
I
good.
know.
Hey, well, we could tokenize it.
Well, let's do that. A token for your thoughts? Oh my
You
God.
must hear that word in your-
Yeah. So we were actually talking about tokenization as a thing. You used kind of an example of Apple creating iTunes or allowing people to tokenize, or they tokenize iTunes.
Yep.
So people would get tokens that they could use at iTunes. So if somebody wanted to use a token for the service, the iTunes service, they could actually turn that in.
Yep.
But they couldn't take that token necessarily to Disney World and spend it at Disney World.
Not unless
Unless
Apple.
Apple buy.
Not unless Apple buys Disney World, which they might.
Right, I was going there. Or some sort of
Then they would own
partnership.
ESPN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And you can use your tokens here.
That's right.
To watch
Right?
Facebook.
Yeah, we just did
To
it.
watch Facebook. To
The
watch Facebook.
world is at
And
our
we
fingertips.
talked about, you mentioned cannabis as one of the platforms, and you got to have the token thing with the.
Yeah,
That's got to be a big
So-
chunk, right?
right.
Yep.
It goes hand in hand, I guess, right? So, yeah, we also have a cannabis marketplace platform. Again, so we're sort of a capital markets consulting company that pivoted to fintech and have been, looking at leveraging financial technology to help companies just have the entrepreneurs connect with the investors in a more compliant sort of sandbox. And
So maybe we could step back a little
Yeah.
bit. When companies do this, when they create a token and then they go out to raise money, that in the past has been called an initial coin offering rather than
Yeah.
IPO. It's an ICO, right? I don't know if that's still the term people are using.
yeah, it's changing. It's you got security token offering, token generated offering. It's still fluid.
Back in the day when you were running your own companies, you took two public already. You went through that process, and I've been through that process with companies and watched it happen. It is a really interesting, complex minefield. So you've been through that twice. with an organization when the SEC kind of had been doing that same thing for a very, very, very long time. This is all new. Are you seeing kind of a wild, wild west in terms of lawyers and laws and interpretation? And, you know, I would imagine the SEC is still trying to find their footing on all this stuff.
Yeah, it is definitely wild, wild west. But the good news is, you know, the SEC's come in, they've kind of mowed the lawn and set the standard and said basically calling every, if you're going to buy a ICO or any kind of a token offering in the U.S., it's security.
And where I was going with the history is a lot of people got burned. There were some big stories that was kind of giving the industry a bad name. And I imagine this is part of the impetus for the company, because when you buy into a publicly traded company, the SEC says there are certain things that the companies have to report.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something that you saw was missing, right? When you buy into an ICO, a lot of times you have no idea what you're really going, and it's pure speculation, and you set out to change that. Am I correct so
100%.
far?
Yep. We're going to give you basically the same optics as you would on a public company or, you know, it's public company best practices for private companies. And that goes for companies that want to do token.
What about regulatory reporting? Because I know after Enron, a lot of the regulatory, I mean, presidents of companies now have to sign and kind of guarantee everything with their whole world. I mean, they sign their kids away when they sign reports now. Is it the same in this world?
Yeah. So you're just following the guidelines of what they call Reg D, 506C or 506B, which is an exemption, you know, but you're basically filing, you know, a private placement, a full-blown disclosure.
Reg D is kind of like for under $5 million still?
Reg D is unlimited.
Oh, it's unlimited.
Yeah. I think that's 505, Reg D 505.
505 is the 5 million. Okay.
But it's really about disclosure and having all the disclosure documents and having a compliant disclosure documents, and that's a private
And
placement.
transparency.
Yeah. It's all about
Being
transparency,
frank
but-
and candid with everybody about what the realities are.
So when people go on to DealBox and they see the companies that you have put up on the platform, you've done the vetting, what is this a stamp of approval saying we are recommending these companies, or are you just saying they've got these base reporting requirements met? What I'm getting at is, are you making recommendations for these companies, or you're simply providing a platform to say, listen, at a minimum, these are the reporting requirements that you'll see for all of the tokens and the companies that are on our platform, and then it's up to the individual to do their due diligence like any investor should?
Yep, we're just providing them as the most comprehensive information possible to make the most informed investment decision. And just to be, you know, full disclosure on our side, we did our own token offering, and you know, we're having to do a pivot right now. So when you go to our website, you're seeing our previous site. We're getting ready to launch our new website. So we had to go. In fact, we were a utility, then we had to switch to a security.
Because that kind of happened midstream, right?
Very midstream, and doing this for 30 plus companies, it's been quite a pivot and undertaking. But it's a great, we're learning a lot, having a lot of fun, and helping a lot of companies.
So I'm going to make a bad joke. So is DealBox's model for you? Do you get a token fee?
Yeah, we get it. So
that was a very
I
bad
know. It's really silly, right? But what is your business model? How does DealBox make money when you have clients that you assist in?
Yeah, so we're a fee-based company. We have a fee structure for, if somebody wants to do a private offering or a public offering. So we have, fees for that. And then, okay, and when it gets into the tokenization, so you guys are going to I know you're going to laugh when you hear all this, right? So much like when you set up the cap table for a company and you look at, all the traditional things, when you look at this in the context of a tokenization, you do the, you look at the token architecture, you look at the overall tokenization, what could be tokenized, and then you look at the token integration, how the use case and how it could be integrated. And then once you have all that, you could develop the tokenomics, which is how many tokens you're going to.
Is there a book out yet called Tokenomics? There's Freakonomics, Economics, and now Tokenomics.
If there is, you need to jump on
that. I've been called maybe a tokeneer or a tokenologist. There's all kinds of weird
You mentioned
stuff
earlier that you don't have to be on blockchain, but all the companies you work with, are they on blockchain?
Yeah. You want to have, I think there's so much neat stuff that blockchain allows.
And I'm going to ask you to hold that thought about blockchain. Thomas Carter's with us, founder and CEO of DealBox, Inc. They productize companies to attract capital, DLBX.io. Check it out. If you're interested, they have capacity. Might be something for you to do. This is Biz Talk. I'm Bob Ryan.
I'm Montana Smith.
And I'm Aaron Canada.
Stay with us. We're going to be right back.
Are people coming to you at this point? Or do you
Oh, yeah.
Are you
more
overwhelmed?
business?
No. I mean, we're just picking the best deals. Yeah.
That's a great position to be.
Yeah.
it is.
We got in at the right time, and I don't think we're experts, but we know a lot more than a lot of people that are trying to do it. And because
Well, if you know more than everybody else, that makes you an expert.
Yeah.
Right?
I think there's I think we're gonna be positioned incredibly well, because I just was back from Vegas. We're looking at doing the first casino, hotel, resort, tokenizing the whole thing.
What ended up
Wow.
happening in Brazil?
That's another thing that's happening. We got all kinds of different projects there. I mean, we're talking about tokenizing
See
the
why you can't-
Globetrotters.
Yeah, he doesn't sleep
Globetrotters.
at night.
So what
There's
would
no
I
way.
get if I buy a token? Is that the only way you can buy tickets to go see them play?
You get all kinds of different things, and that's why you look at the when you look at the token integration. There's so many different. There's so many use cases that you could start to look at, but you have to take the time to analyze everything, and then the more you could build out better use cases, the more value the token has. It's like if you go to Disney and only have 2 rides and one, but now they have a whole theme park and it just keeps going. And now they have entertainment. It's like then you could use the token for more. Just
Remember
like,
when you used to buy the tickets, the E tickets, the B tickets, the A tickets? You probably don't remember that, do you? You used to buy a book of tickets, and each ride was a different
just-
ticket, and the E-ticket ride was the really
the,
high
That
one.
was
the
the
best
best
one.
one.
It's the
Best
same
one.
thing. You're inside of
Space
that
Mountain,
network,
baby.
right? You're inside of that community, and that's where the tokens have value. And then as you leave, there's not too much more
there's no
value.
more value.
You don't hear E-ticket riding much anymore. It used to be kind of a thing that was the best.
We have some really cool companies that we're doing stuff in health, and we're doing we got a fitness an IoT AI blockchain deal that's a wearable that's going to incentivize you
That's
to
like
every bus,
technology on the planet.
right, and the thing is, but it's going to reward you for eating and being healthy and exercising, and you'll get tokens for doing that. They already
That's
got-
impressive.
yeah, no, there's some really cool
Do
companies.
you know about Startup Week San Diego?
Okay, guys, we're
Down
coming
at the
back
Civic
in.
Center?
No,
We're going to be
I-
broadcasting from down there.
Welcome back. You're listening to Biz Talk, believing in Seeing Talk Radio, where we make courageous contagious. They have a comprehensive due diligence system in place, and they are tokenizing companies using new technologies. This is just fascinating stuff. We're talking today with Thomas Carter, founder and CEO of DealBox. I'm Montana Smith.
I'm Eric Canada.
I'm Bob Ryan. Glad to have you with us. Thomas Carter, as Montana just said, is in with us, founder and CEO of DealBox, DLBX.io. Thomas, before we get back to our conversation, I said they should check it out if they're interested. I'm assuming there's a lot of possibilities for you with companies out there. Do you have more business than you can handle right now? Do you still have capacity for deals? Somebody's got something to talk to you about. Is it worth their time to investigate it?
Sure. Yeah, we're it's great. It's very opportunistic. We're just kind of taking the best of the best right now because we can, and we're positioned to do that. So we've been real fortunate to,
So they actually have an idea that works. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
How would somebody know if their idea would be attractive to you? Is there a way? Do they have to come up with the use ideas of tokens before they present to you, or could they give you their business model and their ideas and performance, and you could tell them whether it would work?
Yeah, both.
Both.
If something could be, we're going to be able to tell them fairly quickly. So, when you look at things that are software related or technology related, those tend to be a little bit easier to kind of tokenize. It'd be
They're
kind of,
probably the ones that are more likely to know what it means to begin with anyway.
and like for instance, it'd be pretty hard to tokenize pet rock, but you could, if people wanted to, use the token to buy.
Aaron, you know what a pet rock is?
I do.
We got a generation gap here. Got to check in every once in a while because sometimes he says something I have no idea what he's talking about.
But you look at like what Facebook's now looking at a strategy, and Amazon, and all the big companies. So they're going to.
Have there been any big companies that have actually brought something to market, or they have something in the works that's coming to market, or is it mostly the smaller companies right now doing it?
There's a lot of innovation across a lot of industries. I mean, you could look at what Ripple's doing in financial transaction services. They're one of the bigger use cases for banking and financial services. There's a lot happening right now. There's a tremendous amount of companies that are, and this is a new paradigm. I mean, people are looking at this as the fourth sort of industrial revolution kind of a thing. I mean, blockchain is here. It's, and there's a lot of use cases for it.
I imagine you'd be happy if you were the first name that people thought of when they were thinking about tokenizing. But on the other side, if you're an investor looking at getting in on companies, how many companies do you already have on the platform? And then how would I, as an individual, go about getting involved? Because you said you do have to use a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency at first. Do you help people get a wallet set up? Can you talk about how you might get started on DealBox?
Yeah, so when you go to DealBox, DLBX.io, you could sign up, and then, we could learn about if you're an investor, that what you're looking to, potentially want to do from that side, or if you're a company, and you have a company that would like to be tokenized potentially. There's when you don't need to use Bitcoin to get into it, but you brought up a good point about, learning and educating. There's so much going on. In fact, after we've done, a couple hundred transactions in terms of, trying to sell this and getting funds in and going through the entire process of developing our own token and creating a token purchase agreement or a way for people to actually buy it and transact. So we actually automated that process, which was quite clunky. And I think we're one of the first ones that are actually really doing that. But the point I was trying to make with that is we're actually going to be setting up a company called BitStarter, which is an education company that's really going to provide sort of education knowledge and concierge services so that people could learn about how to set up their wallet. So imagine if it like a Geek Starter kind of a thing, or Geek Squad, right? Was that it?
The Geek Squad?
They could come out, we could, BitStarter, they could come out to your house, help you set up your wallet and be sort of this concierge service, education and knowledge sort of transfer, because a lot of people just are intimidated. They don't know how to, even go about it.
It's kind of a scary new world when you start dealing in something you've never really, it's not been around before. By the way, I got to tell you something. I came up with a plan to help President Trump solve the Korean problem. Now it's happening right now, but my idea was to create Trump bucks and use the Trump bucks to do a leverage buyout of the country of North Korea.
We could tokenize that.
I know. I'm thinking about it, right?
Didn't someone do a Trump token already? I thought I saw.
Did they? I don't know. Maybe so. Yeah, I've got all kinds of ideas built around that too. We can work on that.
So let's say I get set up.
You weren't interested in my idea?
No, I love that.
Well, we need to have a conversation after this. Might be onto something there.
But back to the using the wallet. Say let's say I get set up. I've got a wallet. I've bought into a number of different companies through DealBox. Do I see it almost like a fidelity statement? Like, am I looking at stocks that I can then see how the tokens are doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
That's basically how it works. So I can see where they're going up and down. And then can I access their ecosystem and buy the products through DealBox, or do I have to go to their own website? Kind of how do you use tokens to make purchases and use and buy services?
So there's a bunch loaded up in that. Let's try to unpack it a little bit.
One question with 18 different answers.
No. So okay, there's the purchase of a company, right? And you're going to do that. Whether you're going to use fiat or cash, and then or purchase the company's token with Ethereum or Bitcoin or Ripple if the company accepts that, whatever the company accepts to kind of get that company funded. So that's sort of one participation from an investor or wanting to understand that opportunity with that company. And now that company has its token, right? And what you could do with that token is going to be sort of, you have to understand what the use case within that company, and you're going to learn about that when you look at what you're going to be investing in, and you're going to understand how that token, all the different use cases for that token, and whether that token is what it's built on. So most tokens today are built on Ethereum ECR20 token, which is a sort of the, you could look at, Bitcoin created the blockchain. You could think of like Ethereum commercialized the blockchain, so that companies like ours could create a token, or if you want to create the Trump token to bail out Korea.
Yeah, although hopefully it'll get solved while they're there right now. But so back to the example of Apple creating an iTunes using the tokenization process. Shareholders still own Apple. It's a publicly owned company. Mm-hmm. So if you're a shareholder in Apple and you find out Apple's creating a new division called iTunes and it's all going to be with tokens, How do I, as a shareholder, if I own Apple stock, how do I benefit from that? And we're going to have to find out when we get back. Wow, this hour is going fast. We need to slow these down. Thomas Carter's here, founder and CEO of DealBox, Inc. They still have capacity if you want to talk to them. DLBX.io is the website. Productizing companies to attract capital. You might need that. This is Biz Talk. I'm Bob Ryan.
I'm Montana Smith.
And I'm Aaron Canada.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, everybody. Ray Lucia here. It's your money and your life. Be sure to join me for the.
Hey, that is a much
You
better.
just got to decide
Yeah.
whether you're an investor or you're a
Yeah,
speculator.
it's
that's all.
There's just so much to this story.
It is. It's like you-
hard.
and I try to, like, you know, it's a lot.
This is really good, though. I mean, the stuff that you're saying is, I think most people will get
Some of it,
foothold on it,
you know, but it's so kind of hot topic in front of, like, people are going to be like, I think most of the time somewhat engaged, because it's like everyone hears about it and they're like, but so because we've done this, we want to set up a company. Like, we look at pain points and go, let's try to solve that. And that's kind of what we've been doing with DealBox. We kind of create this whole ecosystem, you know, to kind of help companies from wherever they are to exit and look at, and like when we said it was hard to buy it, so we created this automation process to make it easier to buy, right? And
Is that a proprietary?
but it's, you know, if you know what applications are out there to do it, it's just knowing what you need to do. It's not like we just integrated a lot of different things and put our process layer around it. So it's proprietary in our way of doing it, but there's no.
You know what's kind of fun is most of the time in the past, as you got older, you got more and more familiar with what you're doing. Everything kind of slows down. You get good at it. You kind of plod your way into the future, right?
Yeah.
Wow, what a world. I mean, I can't go through a day without learning a thousand new things.
Exactly.
You
This
know?
is like,
It's the best time to be
it's
alive.
best
ever.
time ever. It's
Ever.
like people could. It's never been easier, I think, to go out and, as long as you have the right roadmap and you know what you're doing, you can.
We're nearing the top of a business cycle in the United States. I mean, our economic cycle this time has been an amazing
You
one.
guys were coming
If
in
we do
7
come back
seconds.
down, does that make the market better for this? It seems like
No,
it
I don't
would.
think there's going to be any slowdown for this.
That's what I'm thinking.
Buy equities. I mean,
5 seconds. Welcome back. Excuse me, I lost my voice there for a second. I felt like a teenage boy. All of a sudden, I lost my voice. Welcome back. You're listening to Biz Talk, Believing in Seeing Talk Radio, where we make courageous contagious. We'd like to thank our award-winning engineer, Jeff Bilodeau, our show music by Derek Audette, our interns, Sarah, Andrew, Suna, and Dan. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We couldn't do it without you. I'm Montana Smith.
I'm Aaron Canada.
And I'm Bob Ryan. And for you women out there, you don't know, but when we were all in the 7th grade, every boy in the classroom was going, here, here, in his head. So when they called roll, it didn't go, here, you know. And it still doesn't, right? Thomas Carter's here. We only have one segment left, and there's so much to talk about. He's founder and CEO of DealBox, Inc. DLBX.io is the website. Go there. This is a conversation I just asked you about people, the shareholders of a public company that started another division using some kind of token system, tokenization. How would the shareholders benefit?
well, I think they're going to be quite happy once they get their arms around it, because essentially what the company's done is create this new digital asset that's going to add to their current enterprise value.
It didn't dilute their equity.
Nope.
So it will add to the enterprise value. Will it pay dividends in tokens, or will it act to grow the entire company?
I think act to grow the entire company, but you can have it pay dividends. In the tokenization aspect, it would be a royalty. So you would be getting a distribution via the token, via a royalty.
Speaking of that, there's different tax laws on royalties than there are dividends. And have you, I mean, I'm guessing the tax laws are kind of like the Wild Wild West. Are there tax benefits to doing this as well, or are they taxed pretty similarly to other kinds of investments?
I think you're going to be taxed similarly. And I think the solution at the end of the day, hopefully, will be some sort of a flat tax to kind of understand.
You mentioned a lot of big companies are looking at this. Are they looking at transferring their enterprise software or system onto blockchain? Yeah. You nodding your head, yes. I was kind of just thinking about with new projects, but so they would actually go back. Do you have any examples of somebody who?
You mean like their legacy system?
Look at Kodak. Kodak's a perfect example.
But on blockchain, they've now gone.
Yeah, Kodak has created the Kodak token in there.
Wait, Kodak made a comeback.
Kodak made a comeback,
A
and they're
big
doing
comeback.
and they're doing their own token.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately, they were the ones that invented the digital camera and decided it was never going to go into vogue, and so they so what did I haven't heard anything about this
Yeah.
new one. So their
It's
redemption.
time.
yeah, someone finally woke up over there. I guess I don't know.
So what did they tokenize? Are they tokenizing their camera business, or they're not doing film? I don't think.
I think there's quite a bit that they could do with some of their IP on the blockchain.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So they have intellectual property that they could actually monetize or tokenize on blockchain.
Yes, sir.
Wow. And you actually understand how that works.
He better at this point.
Not enough about what they're doing because I just haven't had time to kind of drill down.
But the
what-
whole concept of being able to do
yeah,
that.
we have enough on our plate with all the companies that we're helping. So
Is anybody educating like the board of directors for these major companies to say, hey, listen, you've got to get onto on this. This is the value that it can bring? Or
So you know what's sad about that is, so if they were smart, they should, because think about it. If you have this big investment in IT, you think those guys are going to let you know, like, hey, there's a new sort of they're not.
Probably.
So
Yeah, because that means 18-hour days for the next 2
well,
years, right?
you got companies that have sort of legacy processes, legacy systems, and I don't think anyone wants to disrupt that.
But you mentioned that Ethereum kind of made this
Yes.
available commercially, but IBM has also done it, and they're probably looking for enterprise companies with what they call it Hyperledger,
Yep.
I believe. So I imagine they're going out to the major companies, the Apples, the Amazons of the world, saying, hey, here's what we can do for you.
Yep.
Are we already seeing widespread adoption, and is it making its way into systems and we just wouldn't know it? Like, are we already interacting with blockchain even though we might not recognize it?
Not so much now, but I think this year and next year, absolutely. And Microsoft, and you might be, depending on what you're, what applications and enterprise systems you're using. But Microsoft has their blockchain initiative. IBM, they're all doing it, and we're all going to be touching it and using it at some point.
This is amazing. I sit here and listen to the conversation that we're all having, and this is tech speak. It's a new language. Sounds like English. It really does. But I'm not sure. So we should do a comedy routine of all tech speak, right? Nobody would understand a thing.
You might do well up in San Francisco and
We'll give it to our engineer. He can
Jeff,
do it. Yeah. Like he doesn't like any of my other ideas either. I guess we'll can that one. So what do you think that in our parting words, because we're coming to the end of the show, what do you think people should know? I mean, should do if they want to educate themselves? Where is an easy place or a good place for them to get started?
If you just go on YouTube and Google, blockchain, and just look at some of the TED Talks, I think there's some great resources out there.
TED Talks would be one that I would feel like those are vetted.
They've got a
pretty
couple.
well.
If you, we have a VMO channel, vmo.com/DLBX. There's a couple blockchain TED Talks that we've narrowed down that are pretty cool, and some other informational videos on there. But at the end of the day, for entrepreneurs, it's hard to manage what you can't measure. And if you use technology to measure everything, then you're going to manage it better. And I think it's all about having great data and managing data. And with that, you could really create some efficiencies and do some neat things.
Is this a younger person's game, or are you seeing older folks getting involved in it as well? Because it seems to me like this is a newfangled thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's definitely more millennial, but it's touching across, a lot, all the different generations.
Yeah, because gray-haired people don't usually speak tech speak, right? It's a different world. So if somebody does educate silver hair, that's right. It's not gray. Silver foxes, right? So if somebody does educate themselves on it and they think that it might be something they'd like to talk to you about, what should they do to prepare for chatting with you?
Just send an email and pick up a call. Pick the phone up, make a call. I mean, we're pretty accessible. We, that's how we've been able to get some great deals, by being accessible. So, do your best to kind of have it summarized, and we could review it and hopefully be helpful.
This is not only a U.S. based project. What's the future look like for the world? Is this going to be worldwide, or is it already worldwide?
It's going to be global. We're already doing some stuff in Brazil and in Europe and early projects, but more down on the Brazil side because I got some relationships there with some people that are helpful, and I think it's going to be global.
Wow.
Oh, it is global.
Yeah. Thomas Carter, thank you so much. founder and CEO of DealBox Inc., productizing companies to attract capital, DLBX.io. You've been listening to Biz Talk, Believing is Seeing Talk Radio, where we make courageous contagious. I'm Bob Ryan.
I'm Montana Smith.
And I'm Aaron Canada.
Go do something good for yourself, folks, today. Make that mad leap. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
That was good stuff.
That was good.
A lot of good information.
That was fun.
It's funny that, like, you know, there's the book out. The blockchain is
For dummies.
referred to as the truth machine, right?
Yeah,
But all you can trust in is the infrastructure.
right.
Creating the ecosystem for you so that
Yeah.
you can trust that transactions can happen. All of the companies that are blockchain based still are just entrepreneurs trying to find a product and a service
Yeah.
that will make money and do well. And so that's where you come in, right? Like
Say goodbye to Facebook.
you can trust
Yeah,
that if
stick us
you're,
down
if you're
on
selling a good,
Bye, Facebook.
our infrastructure and the roads are going to be
Do some
okay, and
pictures.
you can hire
Yeah.
somebody to put it on the back of a truck and ship it to the retail outlets, and they'll